guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peter Likes Books. And welcome to this series of videos that I'm gonna do titled, Let's Write a Book. Okay, so let me get right into this and explain to you kind of how the idea for this chain of videos came along, all right? So here's what happened. So if you don't know, and I've talked a little bit about it on my channel, I have written one book, The Before, Now, and After Then, by Peter Mon. And here's my picture on the back. And it's a young adult novel. I love my book. I'm very, very proud of it. I actually wrote it in 3 weeks and edited it in like 2 months with my publisher. It is the book that I wanted to write as my first book because I wanted to write a young coming of age story that would have been something that I wanted to read at the time that I was 16 or 17 that did not exist at the time. But it's not really where I want to go as an author. That being said, once the book was published, I kind of went into this very bizarre, actually it's not even true. Before the book was published and the book was just done, I kind of went into this weird kind of, I don't know that I would call it depression, but kind of sadness, like, okay, now what? Like, you've reached that, now what? And the weird thing is that as long as I can remember, I have been a writer. And I think that's a really, really hard thing for us to say as people that are readers of books that we like to write. So if we write and we just kind of use it as a pastime or as a hobby, we don't often say, I'm a writer. Because I think in our society, to say that you're a writer means, well, I've published 3 best-selling novels through Simon & Schuster. And I think that's kind of just, this myth that's out there. And the fact is, whether you write poems or you tell stories at a campfire, or whatever you do, you're a storyteller and you're a writer, okay? Whether it's a best-selling novel or nobody's ever heard of it. And so it took me a while to kind of get used to being a writer and telling people, like they would say, what do you do for a living? And like even still, I'll say, well, I'm a life coach, but I also am a writer. Like I've published a book, and I kind of roll my eyes and whatever. When actually that's probably one of the things I'm proudest of in my entire life. Now, you might ask me why the book got published in 3 weeks. So here's the deal. A friend of mine started a publishing company. She wanted to work with me on the heels of this writing thing that had happened with a blog of mine that I wrote a blog post that kind of went viral. I was very excited that she had contacted me. The problem was that we had to have a book done by a certain time. So I kept on putting off and putting off and putting off starting this book. So I finally got down to the wire and I had like a month left. And I was like, I want this book done by the time that I promised her that I would have it done. So I sat down, and towards the end of it, I was literally writing 5,000 to 10,000 words a night. I mean, it was crazy. That being said, for 3 weeks, I'm very proud of that book. This time, I wanted to do something a little bit different. And so this process has taken me a lot longer to write my next book because I've really wanted the story to be more in depth because I know I'm capable of that. I've also wanted to tell a different story from a different point of view. I didn't want to just repeat the same kind of story. My first book is an LGBT coming of age story that also deals with grief. So I didn't in any way want to recreate those characters and retell that same story. And so for me, and I'm not going to talk a whole lot about the book that I'm writing right now because one of the rules that I see happen a lot of times on BookTube that I think is a mistake is that you should not talk a lot about the book that you're writing. A, because it won't come the way that you want it to, or come finish the way that you want it to. I think that's just kind of like a writer's trick. And B, publishers don't like that, just so you know. So if you've talked about your whole writing process or sent out like multiple copies of your manuscript to people, like not publishers and agents, but just people to read, be very, very careful of who you send it to because you don't want too many people to get it out there. So that's one of the things I'll say. But I will say this is that I love reading mysteries that are kind of deeper, so they're not just crime mysteries, but I also like writing young adult and young adult characters. So what I wanted to do is kind of write in this genre where mystery, coming of age, and young adult kind of all twists and folds together. For me, that process took about 2 years for my last book to kind of fully realize what I wanted to do with the book that I'm writing right now. I am a little bit past halfway done with this book. I've been working on it for several months, and it's taken me much longer than I ever thought it would. I'm very fast in anything that I do. So like one night I said I'm starting a booktube channel, the next day it was up. You know, that's kind of how I am. One day I said I was gonna start my private practice and the next day it was there. So for me, the fact that I wrote a book in a couple weeks, you guys, is not surprising. Other people are surprised by that, but to me, it's just kind of how my process has always been. My problem is that I get bored very, very quickly. So let me just show you, for example, I love notebooks. Do you guys love notebooks? I love notebooks, especially ones like this. And I have in here 28 different story ideas, okay? So, I'm really, really stuck, but the problem is I come to the end of my book that I'm writing right now, which I'm hoping will come out in 2017. I do not want to take another 2-year break. So I want to start a book while I'm writing this one and go right into it, if that makes sense. And a lot of people are like, probably that's crazy, but I don't really care, that's what I want to do. So I thought, there are so many people on BookTube that want to be writers or want to write a book and they don't really know how to do it. So why not share my process with them? And if people would like to join along with me, kind of like, you know, NaMo and those kinds of things, then hey, you'll have a finished book at the end of this if you follow along with me and you do the things I suggest. And you can kind of like take my suggestions and go off on your own. And this, by no means do I think this is the only way to do things. Every writer has their different style. Every writer has their different way of doing things. Every writer has their different, you know, artistic endeavor, artistic medium that they use, and process. And so I think it has to be individualized. So in this process, one of the things I'm going to really encourage is for everybody to find their own artistic process, if that makes sense. Okay. But that being said, one of the things before I started writing my book was that for years, I never thought it was very realistic. I thought it was this total pipe dream that I could never actually write a book and have it published. And, you know, I was just one of the first published authors under this publishing company, Pen Name Publishing. But after that, there's now 15, 20 authors that she has that are doing very, very well. So there's a lot of boutique publishing houses. A lot of people are self-publishing. A lot of query letters are still sent out. And there are a lot of like misnomer or like myths in the publishing world. I think it's harder to get published by a big name house like that unless you know some people and network like that. But there are still so many avenues, probably more today to get published than there were 20 years ago. So let's not talk about publishing right now. Let's just talk about writing a book, okay? Because if you're like me, my dream was always just to write a book, not to actually have it published. And if it got published and I ever got to see it in a bookstore or on Kindle or something like that, or for me it was audiobook. So when my book became an audiobook on Audible, I was like, holy shit, like I'm so excited, right? So that's what I want you guys to experience, okay? But just finishing the book, I remember bawling when I finished my last paragraph. And I was just like, I cannot believe it's done. And I actually wrote my ending first and then went back to begin my book. So, would you guys like to write a book with me? Let's write a book. I'm going to explain to you over an 8-week period of what we're doing, and I'm going to discuss my progress with you, and I want you guys to comment in the section below and talk to me about your progress if you're going along with it, because I do not want to get stuck, and this is part of me holding myself accountable, that within 8 weeks, which will be, for me, if you're watching this video when I'm putting it up, October 9th or 10th, I think, by October 9th or 10th, my 3rd book will be completed. So, let's get right down to it. These are the things I would like to discuss. I have notes, see? Number one, I think you need to ask yourself, why do you want to write a book, okay? Is it because you like to read and you've always wanted to write a book? Is it because it's been your dream as long as you can live? Because I am a big believer in everybody living their life to the fullest and accomplishing all of their dreams possible. Or is it that you feel like you have something to say, a unique voice that's different than everybody else's? Or is it that you just like to read and you want to write something like somebody else you've read? None of that is wrong. There's no wrong kind of book, whether you're a romance novelist, a children's book story writer, or, you know, you write literary fiction. There is nothing wrong with any kind of book, all right? And then the next thing you need to ask yourself is, breathe, Peter. What kind of book do you want to write? What kind of story do you want to tell? Do you want to write a fiction book? And then if you do, we're going to have to figure out what kind of story you're going to tell. Or do you want to write a nonfiction book? And, you know, a nonfiction book can be many different things. It could be a biography. It could be an educational piece on something that you know how to do very, very well. Or it could be a memoir. I thought a lot about writing a addictions memoir or a recovery memoir. as well as just kind of writing in vein of like David Sedaris and telling funny stories as I was growing up. That's one thing I wanted to also do. So for me, I kind of go back and forth between wanting to write fiction and writing nonfiction. But for my next book, I'm writing fiction. I know that because every idea in this book is fiction. And that's one of the things I do, is that every time I have an idea for a book, I write it down in here. And so like I can tell you like right now, if I open this up. So this idea is, I'll just tell you the idea. I'll probably never write it. So it's called Trash, and it's about a girl that they find in a trash bag on the side of the road. And it goes back and it talks about kind of like all the characters involved and how did she end up there. And so it goes back 4 days, and it would talk about like what started her journey. She's like an 18-year-old girl, and like her mom being distraught. And so it would go back and forth between the day that they find her and the days after that and the days before, and kind of weaving together this mystery. I probably will never write that story. So anyway, so that being said, number one is pick your idea. So these are things you're going to be doing for next week, okay? And every Monday I'm going to try to post a video. Every Monday I will post a video on Let's Write a Book. So for next week, you have to pick your idea, okay? Doesn't matter what your idea is. I want you to pick an idea, whether it's about, my dog Tucker's over here, a dog that sleeps all day long and the things he witnesses, or a mystery, or a coming of age story, or a romance, or whatever, your memoirs, whatever you want to do, pick your idea. And you have to commit to it, okay? The next thing that you're going to do, if you're going to follow along with me, and remember, you guys can do however you want to do it. This is just a suggestion. This doesn't by any means mean, this is just my process. I hope it helps some people, but not anybody else. Take what you like and leave the rest, okay? The next thing is, I want you to let the idea swim around in your head for 3 or 4 days, okay? Kind of start visualizing the story or the idea for the book. See how it'll work together. Think a lot about, turn your music off in the car. Don't listen to Audible. Sit alone for an hour and just think, and let those ideas kind of just go around in your head. For me, I had to wait 2 years. That was way too long, but kind of let the ideas swim around for you. Start visualizing the characters if you're writing fiction. And all that kind of stuff. Does that make sense? You want to get used to the idea that you've committed to. And the third thing that you're going to do is that you're going to write down a brief paragraph for you, kind of selling the story to yourself, like telling yourself what it's about, okay? And will it make sense? Like, would it be a book? Like, is there any purpose to this? I mean, because you kind of have to see a beginning and an end. The middle at this point is not so important, but you need to be able to see a beginning and an end. Like, how it starts and the resolution to that. And I think that's one thing that a lot of writers miss, is that there's no good resolution at the end of a book. And that's just my perspective, or my opinion. I like using words so wrong today. Anyway, the next thing I want you to do is, I want you to write your ideas down for your book as loosely or as tightly as you can in 2 pages or in 100 pages, and I want you to outline your book. And I literally mean like outline, like 1, you know, Judy went to the store. 2, while she was at the store, her kids were kidnapped from her car, because you know I love a good kidnapping story. 3, she screamed and went frantic and crazy and went inside and got the manager. Excuse me. So you outline your book, right? This outline can change as we go. It doesn't have to be stick to this, but I can tell you that a lot of authors outline their books. I've talked to a lot of authors, and this is what they do. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go in, let that sit for a day, go through your outline, read it, see if it makes sense, kind of edit it a little bit, and then add those, and those are your chapters to your book. So you're never going to get away from this, okay? Maybe pick some quotes you like, or songs. I always use song lines that you want to start your book with that will profoundly affect the whole thing, okay? And then the next thing you're going to do, this is what I do. A lot of people don't do this, but I have to have a working title. The title is vital for me. Every one of these books in here has a title. And the title is something that I really like. And like, I would love to tell you guys the title of the book that I'm working on right now, because I love it, but I can't give that away. So anyway, so pick a title. If you don't need to be somebody that's committed to a title, just pick working title or Judy and her kids or whatever you want to call it. For me, I like to have a purposeful title, okay? And then the next thing that you're going to do is you're going to let that shit sit there and just kind of, you know, take in and grow in your head and start seeing the idea formulate, because starting next week, we're going to do what every author tells you to do. When I've asked every author that I've ever interviewed, what makes a good writer? They always say, every writer writes. You gotta write. I don't want you to get consumed about how many words this is going to be right now. I don't want you to get consumed with how many pages it's going to be. I definitely aimed for a certain page number, but I don't think that matters. I think, you know, like Perks of Being a Wallflower is a very short book. The Poisonwood Bible is huge. It doesn't matter what size your book is as long as you tell the story that you're proud of telling. And that's really all that matters, right? If your book is 20 pages, okay, it won't be sold for as much as a 500-page book, but that's all that matters. It doesn't really matter, right? Because it's your story. You got to tell it the way that you want to tell it. How do we write a 500-page book? How do you eat an elephant? A bite at a time. So, it's this process is going to be a lot easier than you guys think it is. I hope you want to go along with me on this. If you have any questions about it, email me, tweet me, ask me as you go. But please join this journey with me. I think it'll be so much fun. And think about how many new books we'll have put out there into the world when this is all said and done. If you don't agree with everything I've said in here, that's totally cool, you guys. I want to learn some things from you, some new ideas on how to write a book. Because for me, this is an ever-growing learning process of being a writer and being a reader, right? And we can only learn from each other. So follow along with me, use all my social media, and I will talk to you guys next Monday. I love you. Bye.